All right, guys, we're going to do it. Let's check out ChatGPT and see how it compares to Bard. All right, so I just got access to Bard AI, and we're going to go ahead and take it for a spin. Now, the main thing I want to keep in mind here is we're pretty much going to A/B test Bard with ChatGPT and see which one is better. Now, before I even start, I know there's been a lot of crap talk about Bard, and probably rightfully so. But I think one of the main benefits of Bard right now at this point in time is that it can actually pull from the internet, unlike ChatGPT. So let's put it to use. So the first thing that I want to ask it is to create a viewer avatar for this specific channel. So let's see if it can handle something that complex. Okay, so I wrote, I'm creating a YouTube channel about AI and future tech. I want you to create an entire viewer avatar for me, being as detailed as possible, include their pain points, fears, desires, and other emotional triggers. Give this avatar a name. Let's see what Bard is all about. Okay, sure, I can help with that. Here's an example of an entire viewer avatar for a YouTube channel about AI tech. Ava, okay, not bad. So right off the bat with something like this, I definitely noticed that the answer is a lot more digestible and a lot more summarized. Whereas if we ask ChatGPT to do this, it's going to give us a lot more detail. So let's look at that. Okay, we are using GPT-4, and let's paste in that same message and let's see what it pumps out. Okay, and it is done. So I think this one obviously is going to go to ChatGPT. It definitely went a lot more in depth on the background, pain points, fears, desires, emotional triggers, and it even talked about this, which is really neat. So with Bard, it just kind of broke down in little points here and there. It didn't really go in depth. Now, this is nice too, because it's not like the information is necessarily wrong or invalid, but it's just, if I want to build a viewer persona, I'm going to want something more in depth. So I'm going to have to give this one to ChatGPT. So now let's ask it something completely left field. Let's ask it a historical question. Write about historical events that happened in the UK between 1600 and 1700. Now, I want to ask this because obviously with Bard, it can actually pull data from Google search. So theoretically, this should give me a very detailed answer using its own search engine, whereas ChatGPT can only give me information on this based on what it's trained on. So theoretically, Bard should beat ChatGPT, but will it? Now, also, I didn't specify how long. I just said write about historical events. So I'm definitely noticing now that it's giving me kind of more short, bite-sized answers. And so far, I would say that ChatGPT definitely seems to be superior in length, or if you want like lengthy responses. The 17th century was a time of great change and upheaval in the UK. The English Civil War, okay, the Restoration, the Glorious Revolution. Now, keep in mind, I know nothing of history of this time, so I'm just saying what it can pull out. Okay, now let's see what ChatGPT gives us for the same. And I want to see if it can mention these same events. Now, as I'm having ChatGPT write this out, I want you guys to keep in mind that from my understanding, both Bard and ChatGPT, they still create hallucinations, which if you're new to that term, it basically means that it will just create fake details on things that aren't exactly factual. So at the end of the day, if you're writing something that is supposed to be factual, you always have to double check and not trust AI. However, I'm hoping that Bard comes through and is more accurate just because it can pull from their own search engine, unlike ChatGPT. So hopefully if there's any hallucinations going on, it is more on the side of ChatGPT, but we'll see. Now, what's already interesting is that if we look between these two, there's already some different events that ChatGPT is talking about that Bard did not. And in fact, it's actually listing it out in a list format, unlike Bard, which is just kind of giving us, 4 quick events and a bullet point, whereas this is actually mentioning, hey, here's X, Y, Z, and it's also giving us a lot more information on each event. Not only that, but even look at this one, the English Civil War. It's giving us a lot more information and specifics on that type of war, whereas Bard is just barely It's just like barely a summary. So as I keep kind of going back and forth, I'm definitely seeing some things that are still talked about, like the Glorious Revolution or the Act of Union. And again, guys, we're going to have to give this one to ChatGPT in terms of response length, detail, everything. The entire response is just overall better. But that's why we're doing this video, because I want to push Bard to the limits creatively and see what we can get out of it. So the next one I want to talk about is write a chapter of a horror fiction novel written by Stephen King. So now we're asking Bard to think creatively, and I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how in depth it's going to go, but I'm really curious to see what it's going to use. Okay, wow, look at this. The old house loomed over the town. Its dark windows. Okay. One day, a group of teenagers decided to explore the house. They had heard the stories, but they didn't believe them. They thought it would be fun to spend a night in the old house and see if they could find any evidence of the ghosts. They arrived at the house late at night. The moon was full, and only light came from the dark stars and moon. Teenagers crept up to the house, peered inside. The windows were dark. The house looked like a giant black hole. One of the teenagers, a girl named Sarah, took a deep breath, pushed open the door. Teenagers stepped inside. Okay, walls were covered in dust. Teenagers explored the house. They found nothing. Ooh, they heard a noise coming from the attic. They climbed the stairs. The attic was dark and dusty, only furniture. So far, this is not bad. In terms of creativity, Bard's not doing too bad. Okay, they found a door. The door was locked. Behind the dark door, large empty space. Okay, on the table was a book. Teenagers opened the book, found it was a book of spells. The spells were all written in a language the teenagers did not understand. The Book of the Dead. They were about to leave when they heard a noise coming from the other side of the room. They saw a figure standing in the doorway, black cloak. Okay. Kind of corny, but you know what? Honestly, for just coming up at random is pretty good. So good job, Bard, in Creative Writing 101. So now let's see if ChatGPT can outperform Bard yet again. Okay, now this is interesting. Already, it's actually giving us a title. It's giving us a specific chapter of the book. So obviously, we're 13 chapters into some book called The Shadow's Grasp. And now I'm not a massive Stephen King fan, although I have read some of his stuff, but this already reads more like his writing. Because if we go back to Bard, it's not terrible, but it's definitely a lot more, I don't want to use the term cut and paste, but it seems a lot more simplistic. Like it's his style, but very, I don't know if dumbed down is the word, but I think you guys know what I'm getting at. Whereas this just seems so much more lush and so much more real and vivid. And it's like he's actually writing it. And one of the main things I've noticed already is look at these sentences. They're very short. It's very to the point. I mean, it's kind of in the vein of Stephen King, but whereas this is like full on, exactly like as if he had written it. Her eyes tracing the intricate patterns carved into the heavy wooden frame. That sounds like King. The fine lines seemed to writhe and twist before her as if they were alive. Now already, just from this small little generation, it seems as if ChatGPT is just kicking the living crap out of Bard. That's sad. Now, I'm sure at this point in the video, you guys have probably lost hope for Bard, and I think we're all kind of coming to the same conclusion that unfortunately Bard just does not seem to hold up to ChatGPT. And I think that might be for several reasons. I think one of the first is that Bard is still an experimentation, and I think had they released this a year ago, they definitely would have been ahead. And I saw a few people had mentioned on comments on YouTube that Bard is like a year behind and OpenAI is just kicking down doors with how revolutionary their AI and neural networks are. And it's still writing. So I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you guys. But as you're watching this video, I'm sure you're kind of reading it along to some extent. You can see that already the writing is at least I'd say 10 times better. It's more thorough. It makes more sense. It's a much stronger output. Whereas Bard just kind of comes off as weak, flimsy, and just summarizing things. So my only hope here is that Bard will either do one or two things. It will dramatically get better in the next few months to try and compete with OpenAI, or it's just going to kind of go out of the wayside and everyone's going to forget about it like Bing Chat, and OpenAI is just going to completely take over the space. Now, I will say this, the one thing that Bard AI has going for it that ChatGPT doesn't, at least until the plugins become more public, is the fact that it can pull data from the actual internet. But as you see here, it doesn't always help it in every single prompt. In fact, there's multiple times where you're going to put in prompts and what you ask it isn't going to necessarily require Bard to pull from Google search. It's just supposed to perform a function. Now, obviously with ChatGPT and they're releasing their plugins here soon, that's pretty much going to overtake Bard completely. So really, I mean, in the next few months, I think if Google doesn't get their crap together, I think they're going to be in a heap of trouble. They already are, because GPT-4 is just destroying them. Now with this video, I thought it'd be kind of pointless to have like 10 different matches, but obviously from just 3 very different responses and questions, we can kind of just see the general flow and the major downfalls of Bard, where GPT-4 just completely obliterates it. And that seems to be carrying it across the board. Like Bard seems to be failing in multiple areas, not just one, where GPT-4 is just constantly and consistently overpowering it, and not just the ways we asked it. If you could look all over YouTube and Twitter and see the same thing reappearing. So the final assessment is, of course, that GPT ultimately wins this one. And like I said, Bard better up their game or they're going to be out permanently. And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to go ahead and smack that like and subscribe button for more things on AI tools, tech, and future tech. I love you all, and I'll see you guys in the next video.